This is Heather from the New England Museum Association. We just moved everybody in from the weight room, so we're going to give it another minute or so we can get some last-minute people on board before we start. So if you guys want to say hi to each other in the chat feature and kind of tell us who you are, that would be great, so Amanda and Ashley know who will be on today. Amanda, it is not cool down here in Boston.
That's what Ashley just said. Yeah, it's drizzly and cool up here.
Is there any hope for the future?
Okay, well, it looks like we have a good number so far. So again, my name's Heather. I'm with the New England Museum Association. I'm the Communications and Operations Manager here. And I also kind of do run some of the Lunch with NEMA. So I also want to thank Museum Trek for sponsoring the Lunch with NEMA series. And let me give you their website address if you guys want to visit them and thank them in person. Their email address is in the chat, and a bunch of you guys have already figured out the chat feature. So if you have any questions at all at any point in the presentation, please feel free to write the question out, and then Amanda or Ashley will actually answer the question, or I might interrupt them and ask the question myself. And I would like to introduce Amanda and Ashley. Amanda is the Public Programs Coordinator at the Vermont Historical Society, and Ashley is the Assistant to the Executive Director at the Harvard Museums of Science and Culture. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and they can introduce themselves a little bit more so you get used to their voices, and I'm handing this off to you guys.
Great. So I get started. This is Amanda, and as Heather said, I'm the Public Programs Coordinator at the Vermont Historical Society. So I am speaking to you today from beautiful Montpelier, Vermont. Our enormous capital city is 7,000 people. And a brief background, I'm a graduate of the Tufts Museum Studies graduate program. I have a master's in history and museum studies for Tufts. And that covers it. I was previously at the Mary Baker Eddy Library, and with Ashley, I'm co-chair of the Young and Emerging Professionals tag with NEMA. So, Ashley?
And as both Amanda and Heather said, I'm Ashley Martin, Assistant to the Executive Director for the Harvard Museums of Science and Culture. It's a new organization, and it's been an interesting learning process of, how you develop administration, your digital initiatives, as well as making those connections. And a little bit about my background. I was formerly employed by the Bostonian Society Museum in downtown Boston, and I have the Master's in Museum Studies from the Harvard Extension Program. So, and thank you all for joining us today. Do you want to get started, Amanda?
All right. Yeah. So now that you know us, we're going to talk to you a little bit today about the topic, how to find, keep, and be a mentor. So we have some basic outlines on each of those three things, but we would, as Heather said earlier, absolutely welcome any questions, comments, etc. Down in that chat box, and at the end we'll open it up more generally to questions. I'm sure all of you have experience in either finding or being mentors, so we would appreciate feedback to help us along our way. So let's get started here. what is a mentor? This is what Google tells you. A mentor is an experienced and trusted advisor, or in the verb, to advise or train someone, especially a younger colleague. So that's the basic framework we're working within here. And the only part of this definition I would take issue with is the younger colleague. That tends to be the most common use of mentor, but I think what we would argue is that you can find a mentor at any stage in your museum career, and you should not for a moment think that because, you're outside of some predetermined box, you don't need a mentor anymore. Or that you shouldn't be a mentor. You can certainly be a younger museum professional and be a mentor to someone else. It's all about a sharing relationship is the bottom line here. So that's what the basic definition we're getting started with. And to talk a little bit more about the ideas behind being a mentor, Benjamin Franklin, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. So the mentorship relationship and the mentor-mentee relationship is really about taking that next step in learning more about your field. In this particular instance, we're talking about the museum field or various aspects of the museum field. And the idea is that it's a close, personal, one-on-one relationship with someone else who can share with you the work that they have done and are doing and involve you in that work to help you learn more. It's a step beyond the classroom experience. It's a lifelong learning kind of option. And as I said, I would argue you can benefit from a mentorship at really any stage of your career and of your life. So we're aiming on that last piece of involve me and I learn from Ben Franklin here. So if you're coming here to this webinar today, first of all, thank you. And second of all, you're probably thinking in some way about finding a mentor, being a mentor, entering into that relationship. Here's just a couple of things to think about. If you think to yourself, gee, I think what would really help me take that next step or move into this area in which I'm unfamiliar is to find a mentor. Before you just sort of cast widely into the void, here are a couple of things to think about. Understand and define your goals. And I wrote, hint, finding a job should not be your only goal. It's really tough. It's really tough to be in the position, as I know many of you are young museum professionals, although not all of you, to be in that position of wanting to find work and wanting to make a career in the museum world. And you may be thinking a mentorship is the way to do that, and you may be absolutely right in that a good relationship with a mentor will do great things for your career and will help you find that job. But the caveat here is that if you're thinking that I'm just going to contact someone who is high up, who is doing the work I want to do, and use them to help me find a job and then just sort of move on, that's not really what this is about. You may sit back a little while, if initially that's what you're thinking about. Sit back for a little while and think, do you want to be introduced to other people in the museum community? Do you feel like you don't know enough curators, collections managers, education assistants, or directors, anything like that? Would you like to meet other people in that line? Would you like to really know a lot more about the nuts and bolts of accounting and museum budgeting? Would you like to know more about managing volunteer programs? And that's an area maybe that you're getting into in your job, or you'd like to get into your job. And you'd like to find someone who's got boots on the ground, who's dealing with that, and have them sort of work through some of those ideas with you. Those are great goals, too. The key here is we're not judging goals. No goal is necessarily better or worse than the other, but you need to do some sort of reflection and self-examination and figure out what your goals are. And if you're the kind of person for whom it helps to write things down, then go ahead, do that and write things down. But I think the end goal is that you really should just be thinking about them. So now that you have
a little bit more,
yep.
Sorry. And it doesn't mean that you can't discuss what your career path is going to be, what it might look like. Your mentor might have a unique career path or a very traditional career path. And as Amanda said, learning more, meeting more people, being able to network more and more, either through your mentor or other means, and just seeing sort of a career path is important for sure. But it shouldn't, as Amanda said, it shouldn't be your only goal.
Cool. So what's next? Now that you sort of figured out what you want, research people in your field and specialty. So I'm sure all of you have something you'd like to do in museums, something you're currently doing in museums, something you'd like to expand into doing in museums. Take a look around. Google people in New England in that area. Start to ask people you already know. Say, I'd love to learn more about X, and I'd love to find someone who could just talk to me a little bit about X. And I think here, pro tip, using NEMA's membership directory. If you're a member of NEMA, you have access to that back-end directory, and you can see who's where, who's doing what. And similarly, that list that they give out at conference is a great, great tool for the same thing. Looking around, seeing who's holding what job titles at what museums in your area, that can be a really good way to start to find the right people, or at least find people who might be the right people. So now that you've figured out your goals, you've looked around, you have a couple of people you think might be a mentor for you, think about how long you want your mentorship to last. So this is totally a personal thing. Do you want a lifelong friendship, relationship that is just going to keep growing, or are you really looking to go through a rough spot in something you're figuring out in your work or in your overall career at the time, and you want someone to help just guide you through that? Neither, there's no wrong answer again there, but think about that for a little bit, because as with any relationship, and that's something we're going to emphasize over and over again with this, is that the mentor-mentee relationship is at its heart a relationship. As with any relationship, they're not one size fits all, and they're not necessarily a standard thing. If you only want maybe 3 or 6 months of just working through something and talking to someone, think about that, be upfront about it, and seek that out and talk to people about that when you're looking. You can call up and say, hey, I've got this massive new collections management project that just got dumped in my lap, assigned to me. I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm just looking for someone who's got more experience in handling fill in the blanks. I don't know anything about archaeological collections or weird dolls or something like that. And I just love someone to talk me or walk me through that. That's fine. That's fine too. It can be a shorter thing. Or if you're really looking like, here's my long-term goal is to be director of the MFA in Boston. Who is going to help me sort of figure out the steps along that? That's obviously a longer than 3-month project. So you may want to find someone and think about someone who can help you along a longer capacity. So that's the link. Talk to a mentee or a mentor about their experience. I can almost guarantee you know someone in your personal life and your professional life who's been a mentor or who has had a mentor. Talk to them. Say, what did you think worked? Mary over in the chat box is saying the best lasting relationships for me were with colleagues were learning partnerships, and that one-way relationships didn't work well for her. That's great. And I think, again, that goes to the heart of what we're emphasizing here, that it is a relationship, that it is a joint relationship. But, talk to people and just get some feedback about what other people thought worked for them, and incorporate that into your decision-making. And the last thing we want to say is you may already have a mentor, and you may just not think of them as a mentor. It may not be an official kind of thing. I know this happened to me a couple of years ago when I was thinking, all right, want to move on. Here I don't know what to do next. And at the same time I was thinking that, I was handling a particularly thorny problem at my employer at the time. And I turned to a friend and a professor of mine at Tufts and sort of laid it all out for her. And in the course of doing that, I thought, wait a minute, she's been doing this for me for a little while now. And she actually brought up the word mentor, and I thought, you know what, that's exactly right. That's what this is. So we were able to put a name to that, make it a teensy bit more formal, but also both define it. So that was kind of fun. So you may already have someone who is working with you in this capacity, and this part of the webinar, the finding a mentor part, might not be useful for you, but maybe the later part about keeping that mentor and working on that relationship might be. So cast about and think and see people in your life that you get on with particularly well, professors or that sort of thing, and see if there's someone out there already who's doing similar things for you, and open up and talk to them a little bit more. Ashley, anything you want to add that I've forgotten or skipped over?
Talk a little bit more about the field and specialty part. Great points, and I just want to emphasize, your specialty, what you might be in communications or finances or something like that. Sometimes it's out of your museum field that you really find that professional development, that it's sort of essential professional development to help you be better, to bring back and be better at your museum position, and maybe even just making further contacts outside of the museum field to develop your expertise and move forward with new initiatives. All businesses can really learn from each other, nonprofit and for-profit. It's a matter of being open-minded with that and making those connections. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
That's all.
All right. Moving on. Finding a mentor. Ashley, you want to tackle this one?
Sure. So finding a mentor can be a little tricky or very easy depending on what's going on. So I gave you a list of some organizations that have already mentorship programs established. And these
Hey, Ashley, can I interrupt you 1 second?
Yep.
Can you speak up a little bit more?
Okay. Is this better?
Yeah,
okay.
If you could just,
Sorry.
Yeah. Nope, it's okay. You're just quiet, that's all.
That's the first time I've ever been called that. So I gave you a list of just a few organizations. They have established mentorship programs, and they have a pretty simple process. You contact them. They find you a mentor in your field, what you're hoping to do. There's guidelines, and they give you just sort of some goals and things to keep in mind. And if this is really for you, they really ask you the question, are you willing to commit X amount of time to this mentorship? It's really important, I think, to keep in mind what your life is and what's going on, and if you have the capacity of a continued mentorship, or if you should do an individual mentorship, which I listed as well. But some of these organizations, I know the AALSH had a mentorship program. I think they're reorganizing that, but they
did. They've been reorganizing it for a little while now, though, so I'm not 100% sure if it's going to make a reappearance, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering that too. And it's too bad because they have some really great resources, for sure. And it's, some of these programs end up defunct because people don't have the capacity, the time for organizing this thing that sometimes can get overwhelming. Um, but so for the individual mentorships, you really can look anywhere. Conferences, bosses, professors, even cold calling. But here, it's important to remember a specific goal and not just the job searching. You have a problem, you have an issue, or you want to learn more about something. And as Amanda said previously, that NEMA membership directory, really important for conferences to seek out the appropriate people for your problem, for for learning a different field or whatever your specific goal is. And conferences can be overwhelming, but they can be a huge resource. And it's also about following up. Not just saying, oh, I would love to talk to you about this, and doing so at the conference and then never talking to them again, because you're sort of wasting your resources, that instant connection you made. So remember to follow up and remember to keep in mind their time and their effort that they're putting in to you as well as you into them. You're making that initial contact. So, and bosses, I know personally, I've had some fantastic bosses and really great relationships. And the mentorship level between a boss and employee can be a really important thing. And I know when I was working at the Bostonian Society, my boss there gave me some really important, blunt, truthful advice about what my career path looks like or what I needed to change. And that's sort of essential as you're learning who you are, as you're doing a program, because at the time I was still in the museum studies program, and what realistically would I be able to find, after I got out of this program? I wasn't sure. So bosses can be a really important part of helping you ease into the field or help you transition your career path. Another one is professors. I know, as Amanda said, she had an accidental mentor with a professor, which it's great. It's great to be able to rely on someone who's teaching you, either twice a week, once a week, whatever it is, and to be able to develop that relationship with questions, with inquiry, with being curious and wanting to know more, and asking for help, but also saying, well, I saw this article, or providing something else. I think that the two-way conversation between teachers, professors, and students it's wonderful, and it should definitely be harnessed more. And I don't think a lot of students really take advantage of that. And then cold calling, you really don't know what you're going to get when you cold call. Some people are more than happy to be a mentor, Others are a bit standoffish or they're unsure. Do your investigate your person, figure out what they're like, if you have any mutual contacts, before you just say, hey, would you like to be my mentor? Sometimes just being prepared helps the process, and it puts the person more at ease, because as you can see, it's not for the faint of heart. Like, can be off big.
Yeah, and just to add to that, cold calling, cold emailing, the same way. If you're at all active in museum blogging, if you read museum blogs, most of the people who write museum blogs are really, really cool, really nice people. And if there's someone out there who may not even be in your area, but whose work you admire and who you want to talk to further, they can be a great resource. If you're familiar with the Uncatalogued Museum, which is a blog by Lyndon Norris, who is a great friend of the Yeps Hag, she has a semi-formal mentorship program, well, it's a formal mentorship program through her blog that she offers up and does an application process, and she's really honest and really kind of fun about the way she goes about that. So check out that on her blog, the Uncatalogued Museum, if you Google it. I just want to mention a couple things from the side. Ann Ackerson mentions that regional or state museum associations might have informal/formal mentorship programs. At the very least, could probably hook you up with a potential mentor once you've made your needs clear, and I think that's absolutely true. Whether it's NEMA or whether it's there are museum associations in Maine, in New York, and sometimes I know the Vermont Historical Society has a small sort of statewide local historical society and museum association. And the people who are in sort of that bird's eye view of a region or a state often know who might be a great person to talk to and who you might not want to talk to, because it's not for everyone. Mm-hmm. And Erin also asks, do you recommend asking the potential mentor directly, will you be my mentor? Otherwise, they may not understand that we're seeking sustained guidance. And I think that's a great question. And I think it goes back to a little bit of what we talked about initially, which is defining what you want. Do you really want a long-term relationship? Do you want advice on a particular project? And I think once you're clear in your own mind, what do you want? Then you go to them and you say, either so-and-so recommended I talk to you, if that's the case, or, hey, we spoke at conference, or if it's a professor, obviously you already know them, and say, look, here's a couple of things I'm trying to figure out, I'm struggling with, and I'm hoping I can ask for your advice from time to time, that you can help me through these things. Would you mind answering questions? You can use the word mentor if you wanna bring that up. I think that's totally fine. Say I'm looking for a mentor. I'd love for someone to, but don't just straight up say, will you be my mentor? Because that's such a vague thing. And I think we talked about that a little bit earlier. That's such an open-ended kind of thing. Say, I'm really looking for some mentorship and guidance in the area of X, my long-term career, this short-term collections project that's just confusing me, trying to figure out how to navigate this, that, the other thing. And opening and leading with that and seeing what they're open to. I think that the key here, as with any relationship, is to be honest and straightforward, which brings me right on to our next slide, as a matter of fact, on maintaining a mentorship. And we actually have covered a couple of things on this already, because it's all tangled up. Discuss the mentor-mentee relationship. Well, remember, it is a relationship, and it helps to talk through. As with any relationship in your advice, it goes both ways, and it helps to just talk to people, be honest, say, this is working, this isn't working, that sort of thing. It's hard sometimes to say stuff like that, but worth it, because you're going to get a lot more out of it. When we were preparing, we did this presentation initially as a talk at the NEMA conference down in Newport last fall. We both reached out to people who had been mentors for us, who were involved in mentorship programs generally, and asked them for advice. And one of the clear pieces of feedback we got back from people who who are in positions of sort of influence, interest in the museum world, was we're not just looking to like dispense advice and help on a one-way relationship. And we don't necessarily just want to be like a vending machine for awesome museum career advice. We want to build a relationship with a mentee, with maybe a younger colleague or a different colleague, and we want to get to know them and have them be interested in what we're doing too. So show interest in a mentor beyond what they're providing you, and to be an asset for them. One of the great pieces of feedback we got preparing for this was sometimes someone who is a professor or a boss or someone like that, like I said, don't just assume they're a vending machine. If you either have an ongoing relationship or had a short mentor relationship, 6 months later you can go back to them and say, hey, I'm putting together this NEMA conference panel and I think you'd be great for it. Or, hey, this job thing is opening up and I think the people in your museum studies program might be great for it. Or here's an article. Remember you were interested in learning more about the use of scent stations in history exhibitions, and I just came across this great article about that. Help them out too. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that because you may be less experienced, younger, newer to the museum field, any or all of the above, that it should all go one way. The great thing is everyone has something to offer. What else here? Be explicit about the timeline. We talked about that. Because, like, remember that relationship piece. If this becomes like this ongoing thing and you keep asking them questions, and that's not what either of you intended at the beginning, it can get awkward. And you don't want that awkwardness or uncomfortableness to sour what may have started out as a great relationship. Getting that relationship metaphor was on there. So just, talk about it. They would love to just be ongoing about this. This short project would love to be talked through. It doesn't mean like after that 3-month deadline that you talked about, you cut it off and you never speak to that person again and you avoid making eye contact at conference. That's ridiculous. But, just talk about it again. Schedule appointments to talk via phone or Skype, email, carrier pigeon, Morse code, individual things, whatever works for you. Do you see this person regularly anyway? Is it, as Ashley has suggested, is it a boss in your workplace? Is it a professor you see for class? Or is it someone who lives in a totally different state and you chat by email every so often? Or you Skype, or you give them a call, or whatever. Just regular contact, don't have it just be that thing where you call them up out of the blue and ask them things. No one likes that person, and no one wants to be that person, really, who only calls or is called when the other person needs something. And so finally, clearly state your needs and goals. Remember we talked about this at the beginning when you have a little bit of reflection about what your needs and goals are. And keep in mind that they may change. That's life. Stuff changes. You may have thought that you wanted to be the director of the MFA sometime in the future, but along the way you thought, you know what, that administration thing, not as much fun as I thought it would be. I really kind of dread, doing the budget or whatever, and I'd really like to just be a collections manager and immerse myself in collections all the time. That's totally fine. That's life, or your circumstances change for whatever reason. But articulate that. And it may be that the person you're chatting with is no longer the right fit for you as a mentor because of that, and they may be able to put you in touch with someone else, or they may have really great advice on how to think through your needs and goals as you're sort of figuring that out. So, Ashley, anything to add to that?
No, I think you summed it up really well.
All right.
Hit all the important points.
And if anyone out there, if I'm talking too fast, that tends to be a problem I run into. So please drop something in the chat box and let me know. Slow down, shut up, go back over something. Please don't feel like you're going to hurt my feelings. I can take it. All right. So maintaining a mentorship. And then just a fun little joke. If anyone enjoys Greek myths in our museum world. Happy to do a little thing. All right. Next. After the mentorship has ended.
I'll take this.
Ashley, all yours.
Great. Sort of an important step, to summarize your mentorship and figure out, it's ending. What have I gained? So reflecting and share your experiences. What have I gained beyond a relationship? But what knowledge have I gained? Is there something new to the field that I have developed? And sharing what you have learned. Often we're borrowing information from each other. Museums are such a small network, and we just happen to share either educational tools or curation ideas and exhibit ideas. And during your mentorship, hopefully you come to a point where you're enthusiastic, for one thing, and you're developing these ideas that are not only helping yourself and your museum or, your career in the future, but other museums and other, museum colleagues. So it's really important to reach out to the community, to your community, and this is where sort of you as a mentee become a mentor. You have this information, you have all this experience, and you want to give it. It's a great and important step for the larger museum community. And keep in regular contact with your mentor. This may be, maybe an email once every few weeks or a phone call, but don't just let them drop off your radar. If that happens, you're not using your assets. You're not using your relationship effectively anymore. And that could be a little detrimental to your future. If for some reason in the future your previous mentor found a job or has an opening that you would be perfect for, and you, out of the blue, 3-4 years later, say, hey, I'm going to apply to this job, and expect a positive response or even a reference, more than likely it wouldn't be okay. You sort of let that relationship fall by the wayside, and it's unfair to expect the mentor to always be there for you, considering there's a lot of people in the museum community who have experience and drive and energy, and some who may have kept in contact and built their experience for this job and maintain that mentor relationship. So this is sort of essential. Keep that in mind, and it may not end. As Amanda said, it may just transform into an equal professional relationship, which is great. At that moment, I think you're understanding yourself as a museum professional better, and you have a lot to give, and you become colleagues. It's a fantastic moment when that can and will happen. But it could also be just an ongoing relationship, friends. You become actual friends. Uh, museum professionals are a great group, and we all want to succeed, and we all want our museums to succeed, and that I think helps drive some of these more intimate relationships. Um, so keep that in mind. And next slide. And
there we go.
Oh,
sorry.
any questions? Are we really?
Oh, nope, not yet. Being a
there you
mentor.
go. Thanks.
So here's the last piece. Maybe, as Ashley said, you have sort of outgrown that original mentor-mentee relationship. Before we do this, I'm going to answer Erin's question on the side because it pertains to the previous. Is it weird to have multiple mentors? I have several people I'm interested in developing a relationship. It's not weird at all. I think that makes a ton of sense, especially if they're in different areas. This is not like an exclusive relationship. It's not like you date around for a while and then you decide to not see other people. This is whatever is useful and helpful for you in your career. Everyone has a different thing they're good at. Everyone has a different network, slightly different network. In fact, it may be to your strength to talk to different people, to go to different people for advice. I think that's a sign of someone who is good at professional relationships, not someone who can't make up their mind necessarily. I mean, I don't think like every 2 weeks you should seek out someone new and make that person be the new best source for all your information. But yeah, I know I would say, and I'm sure Ashley would say as well, there have been many people throughout our careers that we've experienced or considered mentors at one time or another. So I think that, I hope that answers your question. All right.
Definitely. And, I was just going to say, you have your boss, you have your professors, you have your museum colleagues. That's a huge network right there. You different strengths and different experiences.
Yeah. So last piece here, being a mentor. So now you've had a mentor, you feel like you've got a certain expertise in a certain area, and maybe someone calls you and says, hey, would you mentor me through X problem, or I'm trying to figure this out, or that sort of thing. So I think the number one thing to remember is when you were a mentee, think about what kinds of things work for you. And as a mentor, keep in mind the relationship goes both ways again. So don't just become that person who just lectures or talks or dispenses advice from on high. Our quote back from the beginning, it's not teaching, it's involving. It's helping that person out. It's getting them involved in what you do. Be clear and honest if it's not working out. This is a tough one. This is a little bit on you as a mentor. Because, and here's the elephant in the room, mentor-mentee relationships are a little bit of a power differential here. I know as a mentee, you feel like you're sort of not quite on the same standing as your mentor. And when you become a mentor, you may sort of get that feeling like, oh, I'm a little bit, you have more power, more connections, more experience, whatever in this person. So this is where it's on you to say, if it's not working out, say that and be honest about it. Say, I am not able to do this anymore because of, my own professional life is just too busy, or I think I'm not the right person to help you through this anymore. And maybe you do put them in touch with another person that who you think would be a good resource for them, or vice versa. Could also be the good standby. Not you, it's me, which is fine sometimes. But be sensible, be sane, be honest. Don't always feel obligated to bend over backwards. And this is true throughout our professional lives. We always want to say yes. We always want to help people out. Don't be a doormat. if you need to take the lead in asking for or setting goals. If the person comes to you if they haven't been to this webinar, and they come to you without a really good, clear idea, it's okay to say to them, well, what do you really want from me? What are your real goals? What do you really hope to get out of this? And what's the ultimate end game here? And it's totally okay to ask that of them. And if you're looking for a mentor and someone asks that of you, don't be offended. They're just trying to help. Last, look for opportunities to include, educate, or show an example. Be honest. If you have screwed up royally on something and you feel like the story of how and why and when you screwed up is going to be helpful to someone that you're mentoring, share it with them. Be honest. Give them the behind-the-scenes look and feel of it. At the creativity workshop that the Yeps did a couple of weeks ago, Linda Norris and Rainey Tisdale did a Failure Olympics. People who have screwed up spectacularly in some ways. And the stories, it was kind of cathartic, it was kind of fun, and it was really useful for everyone to just share that and to learn from each other. So I think it's key as a mentor. Remember, I was talking about that power differential to show that, I don't always get it right either. Sometimes I mess up, and here's how you can recover from that and move on. And that's a really important life lesson. And Emily over on the side shares that she was participating at Babson in an MBA coaching and leadership course. She had a peer mentor with another MBA student, and they coached each other. And she learned so much about how to coach others and to accept feedback from others. And yeah, that's a really important thing that you can learn as part of a mentor-mentee relationship or a coaching relationship, or however you want to define it, is that giving and accepting feedback. It's tough, especially if you may be a little bit thinner-skinned. To hear that, but so helpful and so useful. So Ashley, anything else you want to add about being a mentor?
Be open to the experience too. I think that's all, but it's important. So yeah.
All right, and we are zipping right along in time, so we're just going to skip ahead to the end. Any last remaining questions? Anything else that we haven't addressed, we missed in the chat box on the side? Anything else you're wondering? But have we answered all your questions for life, the universe, and everything? Or?
I saw one person writing. I'm not sure what happened to it. Because I know personally myself, when I was first starting out in the museum field, I had a lot of unintentional mentors that I don't think they realized that they're actually mentoring me.
Yeah, that thing happened to me as I described earlier, and actually I was asking her for advice, and she said, well, I've always sort of considered myself your mentor, and I went, oh yeah, you are. That's awesome, actually. So that worked out beautifully. So Jennifer asks, would love to hear some examples of best ways to approach a potential mentor. She would just come out and say, will you be my mentor, or is it better to be more subtle? Yeah, totally up to you, I think. If you want to say that, go for it. I think it helps to have, remember our initial steps of things to have in mind before you even say. Remember, just saying, will you be my mentor, is such a huge, open-ended, vague kind of thing. It's tough to say yes or no to that. But if you say, hey, I noticed and really appreciate and admire your work in arranging archaeological collections for kids, and I would love to do more with that. Could you help me work through some things? Could you answer some things? And maybe that's all you need. Maybe it's, hey, I really admire the trajectory your career has taken. Could you help me figure out some things? Could you help mentor me through some questions I'm having about what to do next in my own career? Ashley, anything else? Any other ways you would approach a potential mentor?
Well, if you're unsure or uneasy about approaching an individual, I suggest contacting like an established program and seeing what they have to offer. And, you're all going to the single place for that mentor-mentee relationship. So that might be a good first step. Say, here are my goals. I want to define this timeline. Maybe you want to start off with a short mentor-mentee relationship just to sort of get used to this um, relationship and what it can do for you and what it can do for your mentor. But uh, it would be an easier transition, I think, for everyone to say, or for you to go to an established program through one of our listed ones, or if you find another one, um, it or even contact the organizers of those mentorship programs and ask them questions about it and things like that. So.
Yeah, and I think I apologize in advance, but Shakia, I think is how you use your name. How do you get past the intimidation factor? And actually, I think your advice of maybe going through an established program is a great way to do that. It could be.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that through that established program, you're already dealing with people who have already basically said an initial yes. They're already willing to talk to people. So that eliminates some of that. In another case, I think maybe an intermediary step for that would be if you know someone who is not necessarily a mentor for you, but knows that other person you think you might want to be your mentor. Maybe you have a professor in grad school who you're like, I'm just not sure a mentor relationship would work out with that person, but they know so-and-so who I would love to have as a mentor. You can sort of use that as an intermediary. Say to them, would love to get more in touch with so-and-so. Do you think they would be open to talking to me? Could you put us in contact, maybe, instead of just doing that cold calling? Yeah, that cold calling option is really for people who have a certain amount of outgoing confidence already. So working through someone else, working through a friend or someone else, a professor, a boss, a colleague, something like that can be a great option. You can also sort of like ease into it. Someone whose blog you really admire, just email them a couple of questions, comment a couple of times, make yourself a slightly known entity, and I promise you, once you start having a conversation with them, they're going to get way less intimidating. They're also human beings with pluses and minuses. So once you start up that relationship, or that conversation, even if you just start with a conversation, I think you will ease into it. And just to follow up on a few more comments on the side here, and Ackerson, I think it's important to be able to articulate to a potential mentor why you think that person would be helpful for you. Yeah, I think that's important. But why you? You are great at X. Really admire the way you have handled Y in your career. Would love to pick your brain about that exhibit I saw that was just fantastic that I know you were helped with the labels for. Totally. Yeah, I think if the person knows why it's them, and as Sarah said, recognizing people for their strengths and accomplishments. Yeah, absolutely. Following up, we got another question.
And then another question from Britt.
Go for it.
Where it was okay. So, is there a certain amount of time one should set aside for mentoring or being the mentee, say per week, per month? I think it does depend on the individual relationship. It does also depend on your goal and what you want to get out of it. Is it more, you need advice on how to write these labels, or is it something like I need advice on moving an entire collection, and how much time do you need to actually converse with your mentor for something as small as label writing, or as big as moving a library. And it will vary from person to person. Sometimes it's once a week, sometimes it's over email, phone, as we as we said, whatever communication based you're most comfortable with, but make sure you really set aside, say, we will keep in contact in 2 weeks or, once a month, just to make sure everything's okay between the two of you, and, any other questions pop up. So I really do think it depends on the individual relationships and your goals.
Yeah, and that can change from time to time. If you have someone who you've been in a sort of longer-term mentor relationship with over a couple of years, I know there's one person that I've been taking advice from and talking for a number of years now, and about almost 2 years ago when I was changing jobs and just before I came up to Vermont and I knew I was starting to apply for jobs, I think we were emailing back and forth every 2 or 3 days, which she was very kind to put up with. But there was quite a lot of kind of freaking out about this little thing, and do we know someone who can put me in touch with this person? But then once I'd sort of gotten the job and moved on to my next position up here in Vermont and was happy with how that worked out, emailed her, thanked her, and it was a couple of weeks or even months again before we touched base again, just to say hi and check in again, because I was very busy getting settled in up here, but also, it goes through sort of natural ebbs and flows sometimes with a longer term relationship. For what we're talking about for those shorter terms, project-specific kind of mentorships, it may be more often, but for a far shorter period of time. And Kristen says, if you have a genuine admiration for their expertise, that helps. Yeah, I think I would almost call that necessary. Don't just call someone up and fake admiring their work, because that's not going to work out well at the end for either of you. So yeah. So let that show. If you really think they're doing brilliant work, tell them and let it show. If you think they're doing kind of mediocre work, then maybe you should think about why you want them to be your mentor. So, and it may be that they just know a lot of people, and that's fine to say too. I really admire your relationships with so-and-so, or the way you're able to maintain professional relationships with so many people. You don't have to say, but I really think that, your exhibit design kind of stinks. That's not kind or useful for either of you. But, it's back to that, articulate what you admire and what their strengths are. Anything else we can ask? We have just a few more minutes here.
I'm also going to do a little plug for our conference coming up in November, because we're in Boston and Cambridge. And if you are looking to interact with other museum professionals, that is the place to be, definitely for New England. I would suggest if you're going to the PAG lunches on our Thursday, that day, that's one of the events that you're going to sit around and you're going to be talking to other people that, say, have an interest in education or curation or exhibits. And that's a really good way to meet other people, and they could put you in touch with other people too. So definitely use those networking situations at our annual conference or any of our workshops or networking events too. It's pretty helpful. And I like to tell people that are new to NEMA or new to the conference, I'm like, go up and talk to anybody at our conference. Everybody, for the most part, is very, very friendly. We all have the same passion and love for museums, and you have an in right there, is that you have that interest. And so they're going to be willing to talk to you and answer any questions. And so we've always been very encouraging on that. Just just go up and talk to people. They're friendly, honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I've done that many, many times, and I honestly can't think of a single example where I have ever been turned down or anyone's ever been rude or anything like that. Not a thing. I've been going to conference for years now, and I can't think of a single time where someone hasn't had a great conversation with me. Britt on the side says, NEMA's meetups are a great way to network as well. Totally. Could not agree more. Yep, the workshops. Basically, go to anything that NEMA does, and you'll find someone awesome. How's that?
other people there is the participant list is there too.
And use that membership directory.
Yes.
Great resource right there.
Yeah, and if you're not a member, please join. And if you haven't signed into the NEMA website, the directory is one that you have to opt into, so you'll need to sign into the NEMA website to actually set up your directory listing.
All right. I think that covers everything. Ashley, you got anything else?
No, just good luck.
All right. Well, thank you all.
Well, before we sign up,
Oops,
let's wrap up a little bit. Let me wrap up just a couple things because I have to tell you guys about next month. We actually, Ann Ackerson and Mary Case, that are here with us today in the chat feature, will be taking over the Lunch with NEMA, and it will be on critical issues of leadership in museums now, and that's July 30th. And you could sign up through the NEMA website. And I also want to thank Amanda and Ashley for taking the time out to prepare the presentation and give it today. I think it was very useful and helpful for everybody, and I hope you guys feel the same way. Did you guys have any parting words?
Yeah, well, stay involved with, if you are a young emerging professional or would like to be in touch with young and emerging professionals, you can stay involved with us primarily through our Facebook page. So look for the NEMA YEPs or give us a like on there. You can always reach out to us there. And I know I speak for myself when I say I would be more than happy to chat with anyone who would like to. You can reach me. You can find me in the NEMA directory. You can also reach me through the Vermont Historical Society or my personal email, which is up on the, should be part of my NEMA directory identity. So if you have any follow-up questions, anything you'd like to ask, I'd be more than happy to talk with us. And thank you so very much for Heather for putting this together for us today, and to NEMA to help us or hosting us today.
And also to answer Laura's question, the PowerPoint will be available. The session was also recorded, so that will be up on YouTube probably in the next day or two.
And to follow up on Britt, we do not quantify what age you should be for emerging professional. If you're new to the museum field, or you just want to be in touch with people who are new to the museum field, that's what we're here for too. Great.
So it is after 1 o'clock now, and we've scheduled it for an hour. So I want to thank you guys again and thank everybody for participating, and we hope to see you at another Lunch with NEMA.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.